Hi everyone, I'm Michael Gray. This is a review for Perry Mason #2, The Case of the Sulky Girl. I am very glad that the rumors were true. This is far better than the first Perry Mason book, The Case of the Velvet Claws. You can see my review for that. Understand why I don't like it that much. I'll post a link to it in the show description. So this one improves upon all the problems that the first book had. So Perry's not a jerk. He's actually nice to his friends. There is no follow-up with his girlfriend Della. It's strange. He like kissed her at the end of the first book, and in this book, no romance whatsoever between the two of them. A purely professional business relationship. I'm like, what's going on there? Oh, it's weird. He has a new office assistant too. So that's kind of interesting. He has the guy stand in for him at court on one occasion. And, you know, he kind of gets to explain things to his office assistant. Basically, the office assistant gets to play the role of the Watson in like the 2 or 3 places where he shows up. I thought that was cool. It was a different dynamic. It really made it feel like it was a law office. But the thing that made this most feel like a legal drama is the fact that there's actual courtroom scenes in this, unlike the first one. So, like, the final third of the book takes place in court, and I thought that was really good. It was quite excellent. I've seen it done better in another Perry Mason, one of his short stories, actually. So I've seen it better in another Perry Mason adventure, but it's still pretty good here. I could definitely see how this works a little bit better than having just a straightforward mystery the whole time. Like the second half to third, it's just a switch to have that take place in a courtroom. And it really, you know, it's funny. My copy of the book came with a disclaimer saying, it's like, don't take this for actual legal advice. Please do not. Because they're legal proceedings from the 1930s. This book came out in 1933, and I didn't understand some of the stuff. There's some phrase like Rex Gestae, which they talked about over and over again, and I just didn't understand it. So Perry was constantly objecting, saying, hey, that's not part of the Rex Gestae. Can't have the witness talk about that. And what specifically what got mentioned a few times was when there was, you know, somebody saw the murder scene. Somebody turned around, sees the murder scene, goes, wait, stop the car! That guy just got murdered! We've got to rush back! And according to this Rex Gestae thing, you have to stop before that. You have to say the guy saw something and shouted, but nobody can say what he said specifically. That's against courtroom rules. Perry Mason will totally object if you try to say what was said there, or try to say what the person saw. No, all you can say is, he saw something, and you brought the car back to the house to see the murder scene. So that struck me as weird. Does that seem kind of weird that, yeah, I don't know why that's irrelevant. That seems very relevant to the situation at hand. Really, the courtroom scene was interesting. Courtroom scenes were interesting. It's kind of played out that Perry Mason's doing it badly. So, like, he's purposely rushing along instead of objecting to every little thing, which is what everyone is expecting him to do. And he's actually rushing to a specific point that he wants to make, but he's very clever. And it's a big plot twist at the end. Like, I did not think that's where he was going, with trying to get them to reenact the scene where they're in the car in the moment of the murder being, you know, they have it reenacted. So I thought he was going somewhere completely different with that, but no, he had a trick up his sleeve, and it worked really well. So good for Perry Mason. The first part of the book is pretty good. It's like the first book copy-pasted, but a lot better. So, like, if I just describe these plot elements, which I will, I summarize books in my book reviews, it hits a lot of the same points as the first book, where we have a female client who is purposely, like, trying to be innocent and a little seductive, just like last book. And the client lies to him. Yep, just like last book. Oh, that was very sad. They call her a sulky girl because really she's just like a spitfire. She screams and rages if she doesn't get what she wants. And so she's having to behave. And so it's just like, the whole time. So she's being sulky. It's better than the previous one where in the previous book his client was like trying to blackmail him and frame him for murder and all sorts of things, and she was lying through her teeth, whereas the defendant in this case, she had good reasons for lying. Basically, she comes to him saying she's got a will. She's where there's a will, there's a way. She's trying to get out of the will because, she can't get married and inherit. She can't get married before age 25 and inherit. And she's lying because she already had a secret wedding. So it's like been a week since the secret wedding, and now she's coming to a lawyer saying, hey, is there a way we could get this will broken off so I can actually inherit? You probably should have waited a week there. So he investigates. I mean, Perry was smarter than I am and figured out that she'd already been married pretty early on. Yeah. And then it turns out her uncle is the one who's in charge of the will, and he's a really nasty guy who fights with Perry Mason. And that's just like the previous book where, the initial investigation trying to do what his client asked leads into a very angry man in a very rich mansion who yells at him, and they get into a big fight, and I believe Perry has to be escorted. He has to be escorted off the premises in both cases. And in both cases, that guy is killed. Angry guy is killed that night. So, but long after... that's sort of where the similarities and the murders are pretty different. And Perry's long gone by the time the murder takes place. And one really interesting plot twist, I think, is that she lied about her alibi, which, again, happened in the previous book. But her alibi is that she was out driving, and it turns out like 15 minutes before the actual murder, the uncle called the police reporting the fact that his car was stolen, and he wants the police to arrest whoever stole the car. So her fake alibi ends up not being very good because, the police were kind of on the trail, and but Perry finds plot twist towards the end. Not towards the end, like halfway through that, nobody drove the car at all. The mileage has not changed. Oh, and it turns out the housemaid is really messing things up, trying to blackmail everyone, basically everyone. And yeah, the client took some money from the crime scene. I'm not sure if the client took some money, and there's an issue with this money. Because the uncle was smart enough to realize that his niece was being blackmailed. So he gave her special money, which is specially marked, in order to capture the blackmailer. That was his scheme. Didn't quite work, because she had the money, she gave most of it to the blackmailer, and then used the rest to pay Perry Mason. And now Perry can't use the money, because it's blackmail money. So he actually sends it in an envelope, like on the other side of the country, so it will be returned back to him in a week. Which was a clever little trick on his part, but that's dangerously close to concealing evidence, right? But that does tie in, it does cleverly tie in at the end, the stuff with the bank that ties into the actual criminal's motive, so it's all good. I did like how Perry refused to break the law in this one. Like, somebody asks him, well, do you want to falsify some evidence, or plant some evidence, or get some fake testimony? And Perry's like, no, Whereas in the previous book, he would have said, yes, 100% yes. Like, he was bribing police officers and faking witnesses, lying to witnesses. It was really bad in the previous book. So in this one, he's actually a moral person of upright character, and he fights to help his client. And it's more understandable why his client lied to him, although obviously it would have been better if she told him the truth all along. And we've got multiple people who are trying to, cover for each other. So, I believe, not the butler, but a butler-like character was trying to cover for the client. But he's not going to lie in court. He just straight up says, I'm not lying in court, okay? And, let's see. There was a woman who was seen at the crime scene at the time of the murder. And, there's only two women. It's the blackmailing housemaid and it's the defendant. So it's like, which one was it? So that was a good aspect to the mystery too. Just overall, this was a great mystery. I thought it was really good. It was far superior to the first one, and that's good. There were a couple of lines which you would say were sexist, but you wouldn't say they're sexist. They are sexist. They're kind of sexist, but it's not as bad as the previous book. The previous book had a lot more sexism and racism in it. And then this book is more like, okay, you've got one or two questionable lines that you could probably cut out, or you could attribute to the person who's saying it is a jerk, and that's why that person is being a jerk. So I would recommend this. I'd recommend skipping the first book and going straight to the second book. If you're a fan of Perry Mason, you want to find out what Perry Mason's like, this would probably be this would be the good place to start, not the first book. Although I am wondering, it's like, well, there are going to be like 80 more books after this, so maybe the series is going to change a little bit. Probably have more of the relationship between Perry and his secretary, and you know, more of his friends. Paul Drake comes back, and he's a lot nicer to Paul Drake, the detective. And that was interesting. I'll be interested in seeing how their friendship develops. He kind of develops a friendship with a news reporter, and they're both sort of like manipulating each other to get what they want, but they both understand that's what the other person's doing. And that was kind of interesting too. Wouldn't mind seeing some of that as well. I don't know if that character is going to show up again, but like of all the characters, like his friend characters, those are the ones I want to see show up. I imagine in future books he'll probably make a police officer friend, or at least meet a police officer multiple times. There were two judges in this, because the guy who was driving the car when the crime was witnessed, that man was a judge. So it'll be interesting to see, like, Perry deal with the different judges. Or is it going to be like Phoenix Wright, where he gets the same judge in every single trial? Who also is, he had like a high, like, defense attorney as prosecutor that he was going up against, just a big DA. And so that's probably not the correct term for it. Anyway, the guy he's going up against was kind of interesting too. He kind of made it personal. So that was interesting. That was interesting. So, I think I'm rambling at this point. You've got a sense of what the story's like. You understand that I enjoy it far more than the first one. So if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, check it out. There's like a gajillion copies of this book that have been printed over the past 90 years. Because it's like a world record-breaking series in terms of numbers of books printed. So you should be able to find a copy of it easily if this sounds like something which interests you. Okay. Thank you for watching my review. Once again, I'm Michael Gray.